A soldier remembers Lili Marleen.
This story begins about 66 years ago. The actual date was December 1945. The place was Fort Sheridan, Illinois, an Army induction center near Chicago. I was there as a newly inducted private first class, 18 years old. Right off, the Army decides to put me to work. They have me on guard duty with an M1 rifle patrolling a group of Quonset huts that are holding German prisoners of war. Now, as I remember the night, it was cold, it was windy, and I was kind of miserable because besides the weather, I was concerned about watching these German prisoners. But it wasn't too long before my worries turned into relief as the sounds of Silent Night, Holy Night came through the barracks of one of the walls. Dozens of voices were singing, and the sad songs that they brought out made me very aware that these guys were probably more homesick than I was. As time drew late, the sound of a single harmonica broke through the silence, and it was joined with a number of voices, a number of deep male voices of other soldiers, and the song they sang was a very nostalgic, sad ballad, and it made quite an impression on me, frankly, and it was my first introduction to Lili Marleen. Now it's a few months later. We finished our basic training in the States and we're headed overseas. The next thing you know, we're on a troop train in France heading for Germany where we'll be stationed. After a few days on the road, we've been eating cold rations and we've been sleeping on hard beds, so the Army's going to give us a break, and they stop at a rest center. This rest center is north of Paris, and it's staffed almost entirely by German prisoners of war. So, it's a nice spring day. We finished our hot food and we're sitting outside in the warm sun when we notice a dozen or a half dozen German soldiers setting up a music stand. So we walk over and take a seat in the front row. Now these fellows are unusual. They are not the usual prisoners of war because they're all missing something. One of them has a missing leg, one of them has a missing arm, one of them has half of his face shot off. But they're young men, still young after all their experience, but they definitely have the look of old soldiers. Now the band played one American favorite after another, and the GIs called out their requests. The Germans seemed to be enjoying the polkas that seemed to be popular in Germany and America at the time, and they seemed to be enjoying themselves. But I remembered back to that night in Fort Sheridan, and I called out, "Play Lili Marleen." But the Germans simply ignored the request. They simply acted as if it was not made, and they went on playing another polka. But the other GIs realized what was going on, and soon they took up the call, and what originally was a request now became a demand. The accordion player, who seemed to be the leader of the band, glanced at his comrades. He nodded, blinked his eyes a few times, squeezed off the first notes. One after another, the other Germans followed his lead, and as they did, we heard loud sobbing and we saw tears literally flowing down their faces. Well, I'd never seen a grown man cry before, and frankly I was embarrassed, and I got up and walked away. It's been a long time now since that day in France, but any time I hear the words and the melody of Lili Marleen, I realize this is not just another wartime song. The lesson I learned, frankly, is that unless you have been personally involved in warfare, you really don't understand what it's all about.